Hi, I'm Tim. Join me in this video. It's August 30th, 2023, and I'll give you an update that is 24 hours old on FRIAs and the FRIA denial process for remote ID. Let's get to it. Thank you for tuning in. Again, today is August 30th, 2023, and there is a lot of talk, issues on the internet, etc. with FAA's remote ID rule, specifically FRIA denials. FRIAs are the FAA Recognized Identification Area, is an aspect of the remote ID ruling whereby when a FRIA is granted to a community-based organization, there are 4 community-based organizations recognized by the FAA. A FRIA allows RC modelers, aircraft, helicopters, drones, anybody that's flying small unmanned aircraft to fly within the FRIA with no remote ID equipment required whatsoever. Nothing. You fly just as you are today. But the FRIA has to be approved by the FAA to the community-based organization. The main community-based organization for FRIAs, without question, is the Academy of Model Aeronautics, the AMA. The AMA put out an important update yesterday on October 29th, 2023, and it has some actual facts of FRIAs that have been approved, that have been denied, and that are in the queue. So it is going to be worthwhile to talk about actual facts as opposed to theories and whatever else is going on. So the other thing to keep in mind, the remote ID ruling is completely new. The fact that drones are being tracked for the first time in the National Airspace System. The ruling had been in the works since 2018, basically, with the FAA Reauthorization Act, proposed rule, final rule, and now it's coming into effect on September 16th, 2023, just a little over 2 weeks from now. So right now, August 30th, you don't have to worry about FRIAs, remote ID, nothing. September 16th, it all kicks in, and that's where we have to be compliant with remote ID. And I'll get to that in a second. So before I go into the specifics of the AMA announcement, a little bit about my background. I have been involved with the FAA for 52 years as a private pilot, as a flight instructor, and as a commercial pilot. The other thing that's relevant to this discussion, I was active duty in the Air Force for 27 years, to include 7 years at the Pentagon. I have some understanding how these Washington meetings work, and all the FRIA denials are a result of the Washington Interagency Coordination process. And it is a challenging thing to do, and you are free to think whatever you want about the AMA, that is your right. I can guarantee you, as RC modelers, AMA is the only friend we have in court right now with the FRIA process, because there's no other community-based organization that has a presence in Washington over the years. And when you have these big interagency meetings, you've got to have people that know the other people to work issues as they come up. It's not enough to sit at your computer, submit an application, and just hope it all goes through, because we don't know how it's going to turn out. The other thing to keep in mind, the FAA is a big organization under constant pressure every day from the Boeings of the world, Airbus, SpaceX wants to launch a missile, on and on and on. And what's happened with this remote ID, this is a completely new thing that just got dumped on them. The FAA has never done this before. They have never issued FRIAs before, so they're kind of devising, I don't want to use the term making up, but they're creating the rules as they go along. One of the things in my experience with the FAA that really animates them, well, it's safety, okay? They're in safety. But as part of that safety approach from the FAA gets very, very concerned when aircraft are flying over people, because people on the ground expect to not be in danger from aircraft, either as passengers on the aircraft or if they're just going about their daily lives. They just need some assurance that there is the FAA involved to keep them from getting hurt. And I'll give you a perfect case of how the FAA views this, and I think this is what is impacting a lot of the FRIA denials. It's operations over people. When you fly as a general aviation pilot under what we call Part 91, there are 3 types of altitudes when you fly. Altitudes over congested areas, non-congested areas, sparsely populated areas. This is what the regulation says. A congested area, you have to fly your Cessna 1,000 feet above the highest obstacle within 2,000 feet. The idea is you're high enough on a congested area. If you lose your engine, you can maneuver the aircraft and not hurt people. Over a non-congested area, you have to be 500 feet above the ground. That's why we have that 400-foot maximum altitude for airplane operations. Over sparsely populated areas, you just have to be 500 feet away from the nearest person, object, or building. So with a sparsely populated area, say Montana, you could be 50 feet over the ground as long as you're 500 feet away from the people. But the catch-all for all that is you can't do any reckless and dangerous operations. What's reckless and dangerous? What's a congested area? What's a sparsely populated area? The FAA won't say because they want room to interpret the regulation. So continuing on that line of thought, Part 91, congested area, 1,000 feet above the highest congested area, the people of buildings, within 2,000 feet. When it came time to do ultralight aircraft under Part 103, because ultralight aircraft are not certified by the FAA, they have no idea of their integrity, there is no license required for the pilots, the FAA has no oversight. What the FAA did for Part 103 is they simply denied the flight of ultralights over any congested area. You cannot fly over a congested area. There's just not enough knowledge that you might have an accident and impact people. You can't fly over a congested area. So for the interpretation, there have been interpretations for ultralights that an interstate highway is a congested area. Ultralights that were flying over an interstate were violated. So this is kind of the world we're getting into with FRIAs. I believe some of these FRIA denials are close to people, buildings, roads where people that might not be aware drones and aircraft are flying, and the FAA is concerned about allowing flight over those areas. I don't know, but that is what I think one of the things we might discover. So let me tell you what the AMA said yesterday, hard numbers on FRIAs that we'll go into a little bit afterwards. And so the FAA goes, there's many FRIAs waiting to be approved. Broadcast modules are back-ordered and overpriced. This leaves AMA members, hobbyists around the country wondering, how am I supposed to comply with this rule? So the AMA, who has a government affairs team, they're in Washington all the time, expensive, meeting with people in the FAA. This is a question the AMA has presented to the FAA for months, each time being met with a response that pending FRIA application reviews would be complete, broadcast module cost and availability was in the hands of the manufacturers. Completely unsatisfactory answer, but that's what the FAA is saying for now. That's just what they're saying. So hard numbers. To date, August 29th, 2023, roughly 700 AMA sites have been approved as FRIAs. 700 have been approved. Almost 200 have been denied, and about 800 are still in the queue waiting for review by the FAA. So that means the AMA has submitted over 1,700 FRIA applications to the FAA. 700 approved, 200 denied, 800 in the queue, with more being added as we submit new sites, resubmit the sites that were denied. The reason for denial of FRIAs is overwhelmingly safety issues. The AMA recently called a meeting with the FAA and requested a safety analysis review and an examination of the FAA policy that was being used to determine what is and isn't a safe operation. To date, AMA has not received that policy report. Although we continue to try to work with the FAA to keep our members operating legally, we are nearing a point where we will begin asking for congressional intervention. Model aircraft operations have taken place at these sites for decades. There's no justifiable reason why these operations would now be deemed unsafe and reason for FRIA denial. The FAA is running out of time, and although the organization has remained steadfast, the compliance date of September 16th will not be extended. AMA will continue to urge the FAA to provide a grace period of enforcement for remote ID compliance, and they'll keep us informed. So the FAA is not going to slip the September 16th date, but they can do a grace period, and the FAA has done this before. If you read your FAA history books on remote ID, the original compliance date for standard remote ID, where the remote ID is installed in the factory for drones that come complete, that was September 16th of 2022. As the manufacturers are doing their means of compliance, declarations of compliance and so forth to comply, they just said to the FAA, with their meetings with the FAA, we're not going to get from here to there. So the FAA kind of quietly put out a notice that the new date was December 16th of 2022. They didn't change the date. They just said there will be no enforcement actions on the need for standard remote ID until December 16th, 2022. I think the chances of getting a grace period after September 16th for compliance with remote ID are going to be very high. But the way the game is played, the FAA is not going to tell us until very close to that date. So we just have to wait until that date. But again, I know there's a lot of anguish and frustration with FRIA denials. This is not over by a long stretch. Once this settles down and there is some sort of understanding what the rationale is for the FAA to deny FRIAs, there will be re-engagement, resubmittals, modifications. There may be some flights that operated in the parking lot of a hospital that are just never going to get approved. I don't know. But it is busy people in the FAA, the AMA that has a very clear interest in getting this resolved, meeting, negotiating. A congressman could write a letter to the FAA saying, fix this. There's a lot more to follow. Again, from my time in the Pentagon, I worked foreign military sales. There's always, when can we sell F-16s to Ukraine? You're working through State Department. It is frustrating. It can be aggravating. It's a lot of work, but that's just the situation we're in. So again, I wouldn't give up the ship yet. FRIAs are being approved. Remember, if your FRIA is denied, you're legal to fly with a remote ID module. Once those come out, we'll get from here to there, and that is an update directly from the AMA as of August 30th, 2023. Thank you.